Welcome back to part two of my conversation with Ashley and Company. If you haven't had the opportunity to listen to part one, I encourage you to go back and listen to yesterday's episode where she shared with us about her business, Jelani Travel, and how travel has helped women build community, create ease, and take a break from all that we deal with at work and in our home. In part two, we dive into her 13 years as a full-time entrepreneur, and she shares her insights and gives advice and lessons learned to help those of us who may be embarking on a new journey. I hope you enjoy. Speaking about your business, you have been a full-time entrepreneur for over 10 years. Is that right?
Yeah,
I'm trying to do the math.
it's getting close to 13.
Okay. Yeah, which is congratulations
Thank you.
because that is amazing. I listen to a lot of talk radio. Specifically, I'm going to shout her out because she's amazing. I listen to Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126. This is not an ad. I'm not getting paid to say this. Everybody on there is awesome. But from 10 to 12, there is this little firecracker named Laree Daniel Favors. And I heard her say a couple weeks ago, when talking about the over 300,000 Black women who've lost their jobs, about how having a job is a privilege. How once upon a time, we didn't have the options to have these high paying jobs with good benefits. That once upon a time, we were entrepreneurs because that's what we had to do,
Mhm.
right? So where social media, often now glorifies what it is to be an entrepreneur, many of us were entrepreneurs out of necessity. And so it is also possible that as many of us have been pushed out of the workforce, people are choosing to leave due to the toxicity, the trauma that they're experiencing in the workforce, that they might be leaning into entrepreneurship. What would you say has helped you stay the course in business all of these years?
Um, yeah, I mean, it has been a long journey. I think what's helped me when you talk about like social media, it's always like, what do they say? Comparison is the thief of joy, something like that. I
Hmm.
forgot.
Yeah.
And so it's so easy to feel like I'm not doing enough or I'm not there yet or why hasn't my business, hit this milestone? And I used to get caught up in that. And I think if I would have stayed there, I probably would have, quit a long time ago. And a lot of times, entrepreneurship can be really tough. So a lot of times we'll say things like, oh, I've, quit a million times in my head. But what I really had to learn is that slow doesn't mean stuck. And so when things felt like it was stuck for me, um, I realized it's actually an opportunity for me to just slow down. And I think the most pivotal moment, it probably happened for a lot of people, but it was during the pandemic. Because I was really trying to, at that time, I just couldn't understand why I wasn't able to get my nonprofit to move in the direction I felt it should move. And the pandemic just gave me this forced pause, and I had to really reset and rethink everything. And I realized we're actually doing fine. We're actually doing better than fine because a lot of people didn't even make it through the pandemic. But not only that, there was something that happened where I believe because of integrity, it ended up working out in our benefit where, travel bans happened. So there was no travel, there was no income coming in, no revenue being generated because we couldn't go anywhere. And in fact, we were losing money because again, with the sense of integrity and the values that my company has, because I have them, we were giving people money back or making promises for credits whenever they would come back, just trusting and hoping that they would. And I believe that people appreciated that. And so when they were ready to travel, especially after being, sheltering in place for so long, they came back in numbers and they brought people with them. And so business got even better. And so what I saw in that moment was I wasn't stuck. It felt like I was stuck in that moment, but really it just slowed me down for everything to, be better in the long run. But it also slowed me down where it was during that period we made a lot of different changes around our offerings and just getting better. We had time to focus on just so many small things like our welcome packages and the intentionality around it and the branding, and just any little thing where at first all I cared about is how is the trip going when they get there? Like, how and also just really trying to get as many Black people to Africa. That was just my only focus. But that slowdown period made me realize that, okay, it doesn't have to be just Africa. The diaspora is wide and vast. The diaspora runs deep. And for people who are not ready or cannot, for whatever reason, make it to that region of the world, there are some places a lot closer. And who am I holding back or what am I missing out on for people to be able to experience Blackness and just in a way that they haven't before? And, so we started going to Colombia and there was so much transformation I got to see there from different people. And so, that slowed down really helped open my eyes personally, professionally, from a revenue perspective. All these things, these benefits happen, and it was just slowing me down so that it can happen, as opposed to me looking at that slowdown like, oh, you're stuck. This is it. This was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. You don't actually know what you're doing. You've been just trying to wing this thing this whole time, and that self doubt and that self negative talk. And I could have really quit. Because again, we already quit a million times a day in our head, just a little bit. And you can let that fester and you can be in a stuck moment and just be like, oh, yeah, this is the proof. This is really it. I'm done. And I'm so glad that I didn't because I just realized like I just kept getting little aha moments and just clarity. And I just kept just trying to trust that it would all work out. And I will say there was one other little piece that I think a lot of people miss, and I'm just truly grateful for whatever reason. I mean, we all have different struggles, but when it comes to like being fiscally responsible, that's not one of my struggles. And because of that, when there was no revenue coming in, I was able to sustain myself. And that helped me. I'm like really grateful for that, I guess, skill or mindset, because that's been something that's been in the work for years. So then when this big significant, event happened in the world, I was in a position to still be like, what is going to happen? When are we going to come back? But I can still feed myself.
Can you talk about that a little bit more about the fiscal responsibility? There's a part of me that's curious is that something that was instilled in you? Is it something that you had to cultivate over time? And what practices in your business help you get to that point? Let's think the pandemic would have been year 8 for you, right? Year
Y-
8 in your business.
Yeah, 2013,
Um,
7. Yep.
you're 7. So yeah, what helped you get to that point of being fiscally responsible, or what advice would you give to an entrepreneur starting out and how to have fiscal responsibility in the back of your mind and not knowing what lies ahead for them?
Well, where I think started it is a very random, probably interesting story, that I'll come back to from a talk show. Jenny Jones, remind me of that in case I forget. But then just generally what I think an entrepreneur needs to know, and I'm preaching to myself too, because again, the financial part is not my area, my issue, but in all aspects of your life, as an entrepreneur, how you show up personally is how you're going to show up as an entrepreneur. So even if you're on the job and you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur because you're just tired of your job, however you're showing up on your job is most likely how you're going to show up as an entrepreneur. And so and so personally, they say that you will see like a lot of people there might be some studies that show like the correlation between successful entrepreneurs and the ones who like get up at 5 a.m., the ones who read, you know, before breakfast or maybe work out, because it stimulates the brain, but they have this level of discipline and it shows up in that way, and that's something I've been working on. Got a 10K on, Saturday, that type of thing, but that's been a lifelong struggle on my end, but I know for a fact a lot of friends, a lot of peers, financial responsibility has been a struggle on their end, and, like, it's come second nature to them to just, like, eat well, work out, and things that I have to put more focus on, but for whatever reason, it comes second nature to not spend money that doesn't belong to me. And so I've always done that. So what happened with Jenny Jones, I was a little girl watching the show and they had the guests, they were talking about teens who had real trouble because they got to college their freshman year as an 18-year-old and took out a credit card in their name because these predatory banks would let them, and they didn't understand the concept, which I don't think I would have either, and they spent and spent, and even if it was just only 10,000, which we know is not much, but that's their whole world. They'd never seen $10,000 or $25,000, and they just felt so overwhelmed with guilt and just like, how are they going to pay this back and whatever. And people were taking their lives or, you know, thinking about it or trying. And I remember watching it with my family, and I'm just like, this is so sad. And I don't understand. I literally couldn't process. Like, they could just stop. They could just stop spending and they could just not just pay on it a little bit until it's done and never do it again. But I realized, I guess, because that just triggered me, and I just had this childhood memory of just like equating the sadness of it to just like, I'm just never gonna do that. That seems so obvious. And so I literally just never did. Now, there's a certain level of business where you actually have to grow from even that mindset because with business, you should be leveraging other people's money at a certain level. But when you're first starting out, the most important thing would be to have cash flow to start a business around something that you're proving that the people want. You're providing a solution to what people need. And so people kept asking me literally, can I please travel with you? Can you please do this for me? And I was saying no for a long time until one day I saw the impact because I'm very impact driven. I was like, oh, once I got to Africa, I was like, oh, yeah, I gotta take y'all. And I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I didn't go to school for tourism or whatever this is, but we have to get here. We have to see this transformation. And since that's all I cared about, I was like, I'm gonna do it. We're gonna do it. But um people were asking me. So the market was there and they had to pay a deposit in order for me to be able to do anything, to book anything. So that particular business model allowed me to not really have a high overhead. I could only go off of what I was being given. Only real question was, did I ask for enough to create a profit for myself? But it would never be a situation where I didn't have the money to pay for whatever I was supposed to pay for. Whereas like some products you have to like buy those products first and then sell it. That wasn't that case. So between my business model and my personal, I guess whatever happened at a young age of like I don't spend money that's not mine. I have a credit card, but I use it like a debit card. Whatever I spend on it at the end of the month, I'm gonna pay it off because I just don't understand the concept. It's not my money unless it was an emergency or, something that needed to take place. But I've literally never understood that since a child and I just never did it. But that type of practice, if you do that and you end up paying something just 1 month in advance, you'll literally never have a late payment, never have interest. And I did that one time when I knew I had a corporate job, and when I knew I was leaving, I was like, let me try to pay everything up 1 month, which wasn't that hard because I was never late. I was never behind. So I only had to come up with money for 1 month of every bill. And then I was like, okay, I just kept saving a little bit. And I just think that idea came with me. So as a personal, your personal choices and your personal strengths and what you personally work on is going to be reflected in business. And, don't beat yourself up if it's not so perfect in one side because again, there's other aspects that will also show up in your business. So that I just think, just working, trying to get that holistic um in all areas of your life, just trying to improve, but knowing that it doesn't mask it. You can't just it's not gonna just show up one way in your business and show up another way in your personal life.
Yeah, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So
Yes, that's it. That's it.
that's clear. Okay. How how do you talked about social media and comparison, but how do you quiet the noise? Whether it's comparison, fear, or pressure, and reconnect with your original why?
Um, I like that you said quiet the noise because the reality is the noise is always gonna be there. But turning it down, that's important. Just but to think that it's not gonna be there, I just don't think that's realistic. And I think kind of like in 2020 when I had to just tell myself it's about trust. Like I had to tell myself and faith. I just had to tell myself like it, it's it's going to be okay, and then I look for evidence to support that. So sometimes when things get hard, I'll look at testimonials. I'll watch my old videos. I'll There's been times everything doesn't always go perfect. So, there might be some times where there's a customer who doesn't communicate the best and maybe they're not happy and maybe I don't like the way that feels. And I probably quit a little bit in my head, but then I'll literally have to go talk to friends, talk to other clients, or I'll see something online because we have Google reviews. I'll just literally go and just read those, or I'll look at my phone and remind myself of the work that I'm doing and the impact that I'm having, and know that everything's not going to be perfect. You're not always going to get it right, but the intention is there. If and I remind myself, I look at my own receipts, like of the time, because there's been for a long time I just kept thinking every year like eventually nobody's gonna wanna go with me anymore, like, this is gonna get old. Cause I mean, why? Or there's just not gonna be where are we gonna go next? Or, this is just not gonna keep selling out, ain't no way, like, I would think like that, and I was like or at some point, I was just being disbelief, and I remember at one point I was like, "Well, how many years? It's been 6 years, you still in disbelief?" Like, I use the time to help me quiet the noise because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, I really have been around. I do need to stop doubting myself. I actually know more than everybody in this room, and I need to start acting like it." So just kinda reminding myself of who I am, but then also literally looking at time, looking at impact, um, those things help.
Yeah, and while while this is not a business, right? This is like a passion project. It really is jumping in the middle and having it turn out where you're like, Where are we going next? Are people go?" I'm like, "What am I talk about next?" Like, why did I say I was gonna do this every day? I'm like, I'm running out of topics, right? But it keeps coming. So,
Mhm.
it's something
Every time. When you're
thank
doing what
you.
you're supposed to be doing, every time.
There's been a couple of times throughout this conversation, this picture keeps coming to mind, and I'm sure you've seen it on social media where the guy has the pick and he's clawing away at something and like he's about to give up and he doesn't we can see the side view and like he's so close, right? And is like giving up. And that's what I hear you saying is you have these moments and you're like, it's been 6 years. Like, who's gonna want to keep doing this? But it's like if you just keep going. And even just thinking about you making it through the pandemic, had you stopped at year 5 or had you stopped when the nonprofit wasn't going the way that you thought it would, you would have never gotten to that point.
I would just love to say, because I think about that photo and he's like clawing away in the diamond mine, and the diamond is right there and he doesn't see it. But I think another good part they should add is like, what if you just turned a different way and maybe you got there quicker? Or
Ooh.
even if it took a little longer, like, but you still get there. Because when I think about 2020, when I think about my nonprofit, which is like that was my baby, and I was just like devastated that people didn't see the value in getting Black kids to have these experiences, but we gotta figure out how to pay for them. I felt like a failure. This was my dream. I know it will work. I know it will be transformative, but how am I gonna do it? And I always was successful in doing it. I just wasn't successful on the end of being able to pay myself. So that really is sustainable. And I didn't really give up. I tried like a different rebrand and that didn't really work. But what was happening is I was being pulled in 2 different directions, and what I realized is the nonprofit in the way that it was needed all of my attention, and so did Jelani Travel, and I had to pick, and I was refusing to pick, and because I just see the, passion and importance and impact of both, the little girls in us need get to go, and the little girls that are actually out here, I wanted to go, and I couldn't figure it out, but the pandemic slowed me down no matter what, and then it gave me the clarity that it's not a failure, it just needs to look a different way, and now it looks completely our nonprofit and our social impact arm looks completely different, but I've never been more proud of what we're accomplishing now because we're reaching hundreds of HBCU students, getting them passports and just the connections and the stories and just the experience that I had even going back to Hampton and talking to some of the students themselves as they were applying for it. Something I never would have imagined because I was always just trying to look at it one way. And so I just think when I think about that meme, I'm like, you going at it, but you're having such a hard time because 'cause you're going at it all wrong, and I think the way that I started all definitely made sense, but it was probably 2018 when I should have been more willing and open to look at it differently, and I could already been set up before 2020 hit, but 20 sometimes God is like, "You're walking in your purpose so well that you're clearly not listening to me and telling you exactly what to do. So I'm gonna shut it all down and help you figure it out. And I'm grateful for that. I definitely had warnings and signs that I could have taken it in 2018 and figured something out, but I took my time. 2020, we made that pivot, and now it just looks so different. And I'm just so proud of what we're able to do. But it also took a lift off me that I'm able to focus on Jelani Travel more. And as a result of that, so many more people get to have even grander experiences and their families and their grandbabies and their husbands are able to go because I'm just, opening it up and thinking more broadly about where we go, how we go, who gets to go. And I love that.
Nice. What advice or what final words would you have for Black women who are in the thick of it right now? They might have been laid off, they might be furloughed, they may be concerned about their health care. What words would you leave them with?
As a travel expert, the first thing I thought of when you said health benefits is like you could actually travel and get some whatever you need done for a lot lower. That's a hack. But ultimately I think it's from a motivation and like hope standpoint is like whether it's benefits, it's pay, or it's just the constant beat down that we're experiencing being here. I think it's just important to remind yourself of who you are and why you exist and to remember that part of why you exist isn't some specific detailed purpose. Some of it is just to be joy, just to be in joy, just to experience joy. Like that's a big part of our purpose. And I think that gets lost, especially in a capitalistic society. And so you can find those moments in the midst of all the mess. Even if sometimes, if you ever heard of just another Black woman laugh so hard, and now all of a sudden you're laughing because it's contagious just even if it's that small, you know how we hype each other up when we see somebody that looks good and now they done made your day 'cause they're like, "Girl, I see you from across the street." Don't forget to appreciate those moments. Don't forget to be those moments. It's the small things that we're holding on to and like you said earlier, the community, finding it, not just in the simple like let me get a Facebook group or let me get in a group chat like your neighbor, whoever you haven't reached out to in a while, connection, because we really need each other now more than ever, no matter what industry, no matter what's going on. It's community.
Well, Ashley, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me today. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you and follow you?
Yes, I'm very active on Instagram at Ashley and Company underscore. But you can also reach out to me, number, email, all of that is on the website at gojelanitravel.com.
Yep, and I'll make sure we include all of that in the show notes. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Jelani Travel founder Ashley and Company. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and if the government is still shut down, I will see you tomorrow.